We're back with another video, and this is my my favorite albums of 2024. Now, I know we got to discuss the elephant in the room. Yes, I said I was going to do lists for 2004 and 1994, and I didn't do them. I didn't get them up in time before the end of the year. The holidays are busy, guys. I'm a fat old dad, okay? I got a lot of shit happening in my life. I don't have time to be making videos all the time. I don't have time to be ranting on about my love of music, this hobby that really belongs only to teenagers, you know, at 46 years old. You know, I think it's about time, you know, that I focus on my family before this crap, right? Wait. Were you guys thinking that by elephant in the room I meant this this thing? Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand what the big deal is. It's just normal clothing. All right, so we're gonna start number 24, and I'm just gonna put this one, The Way Out of Easy, Jeff Parker, the ETA Quartet. Came at the pretty much the end of the year. Some people got their hands on it earlier if they were able to get the vinyl, like as soon as it was released. The streaming came out a little bit later. I like that they're doing that. They did that with the Anna Butters album as well. But because it came right at the end of the year and the streaming wasn't readily available, I didn't feel like I've really had enough time to spend with it. But chances are, listen, if a Jeff Parker album is put out in the year, I'm going to buy it. And the chances are it's probably going to show up on my year-end favorites. It's an improvisational set, recorded live, very laid back in nature, but like at times with these sudden bursts of energy that kind of bring out a little bit of funk. But all in all, a lot more restrained, very kind of soulful grooves, something that you can really kind of just get lost in. You know, another fantastic release by Jeff Parker and company. All right, number 23, we have Tiger's Blood by Waxahachie. Definitely one of the most anticipated releases of the year for me. St. Cloud from 2020 was my favorite album of that year. The advanced single, Right Back to It, featuring MJ Linderman, was a perfect way to kind of kick off the year. Looking at my Apple playlist, my Apple Music, most played list or whatever, that song was right up at the top because of preschool drop-offs with my daughter. She really loved that song. So a heavy mix of Waxahachie and Taylor Swift for preschool drop-offs in the spring of this year. This album was produced by Brad Cook. He also plays bass on it, accompanied by his brother Phil on keys and other instruments. Spencer Tweedy, Jeff's son, plays drums, and the previously mentioned MJ Linderman plays lead guitar throughout. Really, a lot of these songs kind of remind me of earlier Waxahachie, kind of that emo-esque, like alternative rock, but just played with like an acoustic Americana country rock band, feel. My favorite songs as time has gone on are the songs that kind of lean more country rock on this record. I don't love it as much as St. Cloud, but I still think it's a fantastic album and definitely worth being on this list of year-end favorites. Okay, at number 22, I have the second album by the Golden Highway fiddler Bronwyn Keith Hines. This is actually her first vocal album. Her previous record was all instrumental. There's a lot of duets on this record. Guests include her Golden Highway band leader Molly Tuttle, Jerry Douglas, Sam Bush, Jason Carter, Dierks Bentley, Britt Taylor. The band includes Brian Sutton on guitar, Dominic Leslie on mandolin, Wesley Corbett and Scott Vestal on banjo, and Jeff Picker on bass. It's just an absolutely gorgeous bluegrass album. Perfect kind of blend of traditional Appalachian folk and, modern contemporary kind of newgrass. Looking forward to seeing what else she brings out on the solo side of things. Bravo and Keith Hines, I Built a World.
Without winning, can't live without love. Hope is coming to me now. There's nowhere I'm going back to that old bar in town.
At number 21, I have Sentiment by Claire Rousey. Claire Rousey is a percussionist and experimental avant-garde musician. This is one of her more accessible works, though. I would call it kind of like a slowcore album for present day. And I say that because it's got a slowcore kind of feel to it. But she's using vocoder on her vocals, I think in a very kind of cool way. There's also just a lot of electronics mixed with the guitar and then, use of strings throughout as well. It's a really forward-thinking popular music album in the sense that there's a lot of traditional song structures, kind of, verse and chorus, but also with a lot of like sonic ambient experimentation, really exploring that realm of ambient music. All right, at number 20, I have Sprints, Letter to Self. Sprints is the Irish band, post-punk, I guess you would call them. I would say maybe garage punk. I think if you remember like the garage rock revival of the early 2000s, I think Sprints pulls from a lot of that sound and that era, but also a good amount of the post-punk. And I think that they're kind of grouped in with a lot of these bands from the UK that have kind of started a post-punk revival, if you will. Carla Chubb, the lead vocalist, is kind of really where it's at on this album. She's an absolute fucking rock star. But the band is, as a whole, is great as well. The guitar tones are absolutely incredible. They sound very angular at one moment and then very heavy and dissonant at the next. It kind of fills in a gap everywhere from like, Gang of Four to like the Jesus Lizard. And again, kind of like that 2000s guitar sound that you would hear a lot from bands like The Strokes or like Interpol, maybe like the early Interpol. I've seen a lot of people online kind of say about Sprints, they're kind of late to the game or whatever. Fuck that, screw trends. This is an absolutely incredible record. And I love it.
Do you ever feel like the room is heavy, like the air is hot and the air is sweaty? Do you ever feel like the room is heavy? Like you barely breathe, and I'm watching the world go around the window beside me.
Okay, at number 19, I have Visitor by John Moreland. Now this album kind of caught me by surprise because John Moreland I've been into for a while now. But his last couple of albums, he worked with Matt Pence from Centromatic, a band that I absolutely love, and I love Matt Pence, and I love his general aesthetic. But I felt for John Moreland it didn't like work. So for his last two albums, he kind of like experimented a little bit with electronics, mixing it with his folk and country rock kind of sound. They're not bad records, but they're not his best either by any stretch of the imagination. Visitor, I hate to use this term, but return to form for sure. The songs are just excellent and it's stripped down. He recorded it himself. There's only one guest really on the record, John Calvin Abney, the guitarist. And yeah, it's just a more stripped down approach. It pushes what he does best to the forefront. And just makes for an absolutely excellent album. I think his best record in 11 years. Probably going back to my favorite of his, In the Throes from 2013.
So while we revel on ground unlevel. We give our devils a place to hide. We're suicidal, flags and false idols, and God's own precious guns won't ever turn back the tide. A gentle violence, miles of silence, separating you and me.
All right, at number 18, I have a little bit of modern R&B. Algorithm by Lucky Daye. Lucky Daye is an artist that grew up in Louisiana, I believe. He grew up in a very religious household where he wasn't allowed to listen to secular music. So everything that he learned about being a popular music, writer, he kind of taught himself. Yeah, and this is a very contemporary sounding R&B album, but it's also hugely informed by sounds of the 70s and the 80s. You hear strong Prince vibes, strong Rick James, Kool and the Gang, that kind of thing. Where so much of R&B today are like these coal mine releases that like artists that sound like they want to jump in a time machine and like go back to the 60s or in the 70s, and they just sound like just ripping off that sound, really. But I like these more modern artists like Lucky Daye that are trying to like advance the genre while paying like homage to the past. Yeah, and it's just a fantastic record. I would say for fans of early Frank Ocean, Janelle Monáe, Miguel. Yeah, if you love those guys, you love those artists, you're going to love Lucky Daye. All right, number 17, I have Oyster Cuts by Quivers. This is their third full length. Their last album, Golden Doubt from 2021, was probably my favorite of that year. So it was going to be hard for them to top that release. They don't quite do that, but with this release, they definitely cement kind of like their favorability, at least to me personally, as one of my favorite, discoveries over the last 5 to 6 years as far as new bands go. I think where Quivers has kind of come to at this point in their career, where they started. They're not one of those kind of twee indie pop bands in my mind. I feel like they've kind of expanded their sound to a place where they're more of like a band like the New Pornographers that pays homage to a wide range of pop rock music, everything from power pop to, even 80s kind of new wave. But yeah, just another home run by Quivers. Oyster Cuts at number 17. At number 16, I have Pulled Rope by Vibio Sound Machine. The electronic band out of London. They mix Afrobeat with electronic, dance music, R&B, even like a little bit of post-punk kind of thrown in there. Vocalist Eno Williams, fantastic, sings in English and Nigerian throughout. There are some somewhat political messages on this record, but they're kind of driven by like a sense of positivity, like a kind of like a togetherness message. The song Pull the Rope, it's very much like, let's all work together, but it's not like in some cheesy delight, grooves in the heart way or anything. It's positivity that we can take seriously, but like in a good way.
Everybody get up, everybody get down, and the sun goes up, and the sun goes down. Everybody get up. From Sule to Isalico, Ikoyi, Yaba, down to London, to Africa. Got to be who you are.
Okay, at number 15, I have Return of the Spirit by Sun Atlas. This is a band that kind of functions under anonymity. All the pictures of this LA-based collective includes people behind masks in really elaborate kind of costumes. They are a jazz and funk band, but they bring in all these elements of subgenres like, Afrobeat, ethio jazz and spiritual jazz, soul music, even like some hip hop breaks thrown in there. There's a very kind of psychedelic feel to it as a whole, like very cosmic sounds, kind of like, the most accessible kind of Sun Ra vibes for people that are into the most basic, like instrumental music, like the most basic instrumental music fans. At number 14, I have Sentir Que No Sabes by Mabe Frati. Mabe Frati is a cellist, experimental musician, avant-garde musician out of Guatemala, but based right now, I believe, in Mexico City. This is her 4th solo release. It translates to a feeling like I don't know or feel like I don't know. It's kind of all over the map as far as sounds go. There's like a mix of genres that I to a point where I'd say it's really kind of unclassifiable. There's definitely elements of modern classical and elements of jazz in here, more towards modern classical, but they're fused with, sounds of popular music. And there's like a chorus, verse chorus, vocal structure. It's all sung in Spanish. It's a Spanish language album. And I would say that this album is for people that are into popular music, that like a kind of more experimental popular music, but also people that I know that are just really into avant-garde in general. I would check this out. It's an outstanding record.
Mientras los demás tienen otra historia que hacer con estos pedazos, estar a la espera de un milagro. En mi imaginación se ve una pantalla azul.
All right, at number 13, I have Acadia by Yasmin Williams. She's a Virginia folk guitarist, an artist that popped up on my radar around 2020 or 2021. She had a record that was pretty much inspired by like the murder of George Floyd and kind of the events that followed. This album is sounds a lot more uplifting and a lot more positive than that. It's an absolutely beautiful record. Some of the most beautiful music that I heard in all of 2024. She really pays homage to a myriad of styles of folk music. Everything from American primitive style guitar picking to Appalachian folk music to blues to even like jazz. Aoife O'Donovan is on here, Dom Flemons, and then Emmanuel Wilkins is on here. Yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful folk music record. I think offers a lot to a lot of people. Okay, number 12, I have Free Energy by Dummy. This is their second album, their sophomore release. Their first album came out in 2021. It's called Mandatory Enjoyment. It was one of my favorite releases of that year. They're a Los Angeles-based band, but a lot of their music reminds me of music from like overseas, from Europe specifically. There are strong Stereolab vibes on their first record, and some of that carries over for sure into this one. There's heavier guitar on this at times, edgier kind of electronic sounds. Parts of it sound even kind of like shoegaze-ish. They're one of those bands that puts out albums and music that kind of reveals more and more with each listen. Classic kind of like grower album, and they make albums like that. Okay, at number 11, I have The Fear of Standing Still by American Aquarium. Lead singer-songwriter BJ Barham touches on a lot of subjects that are not very rock and roll. Okay, we're talking about fatherhood, marriage, childhood nostalgia, and he does it in a way that is not cheesy or overly sentimental at all. The opening track, Crier, is an absolutely blistering rock song with one of the heaviest kind of baritone growls that I've ever heard come out of him. It's really just all about letting, a man know that it's okay to be all in your feels. The song Babies Having Babies touches on the theme of abortion. And then there's the song Southern Roots, which has become somewhat of a personal anthem for me since first hearing it. It's a song all about kind of reassessing and reclaiming like your values of what you consider yourself as a Southerner, but especially a Southerner with a progressive state of mind. We live in a world today with a lot of angry like podcasters, a lot of affluent, white, power-hungry men that have really just become a bunch of whiny bitches. Let's be honest. Whining about their manhood being taken from them or whatever. Fuck that. This is an album full of songs about what it truly means to be a man. Highly recommend for fans of this genre, this kind of the Americana alt country sound, The Fear Standing Still by American Aquarium. Okay, at number 10, I have Small Changes by Michael Kiwanuka. Maybe a little bit of recency bias with where I'm placing it in my top 10. Like it came out about a week before Thanksgiving. So since then, I've listened to this album more than any other. I love it because it kind of sneaks up on you. Like at first you listen to it and it sounds kind of samey. It's very mid-tempo all the way through. But with each listen, it just reveals more and more. I always felt like his earlier music was a lot more indebted to kind of like rock and blues rock, but also mixing in that R&B. Here, it's almost kind of like a folk rock kind of sound mixed with R&B. Very strong, kind of like Bill Withers vibes. It's got this incredible bass guitar sound throughout that is very much like a Danger Mouse kind of thing. But then mix that in with like the kind of like epic environments that both Danger Mouse and Inflow are known for, and it's just an incredibly deep record on a lot of levels. For anybody that has listened to it and said, I don't know, maybe you're one of those people that's just like, I always like their first album better. I would suggest sticking with it because it really reveals itself in time.
Falling under, I've had enough. Low down, I'm low down and out. Low down, I'm so down and out. It is time.
Number 9 is an album that I don't have in physical format because it hasn't come out yet in physical format. It's the album Diamond Jubilee by Cindy Lee. Psychedelic music reminds you of, psych pop from the 60s to Velvet Underground, even like girl group sounds like the Ronettes. Name any girl group sound from like the Brill Building days, the Wall of Sound Spectre days. Has a knack for sounding extremely unique, but also writing really kind of catchy pop hooks. And I usually don't like to tell artists that I like to edit themselves or tell them how they should go about making their art. It's super fucking long. We're talking over 2 hours of music here. But I feel like this album has like probably like 12 to 15 songs that if you put those together on one record might even be the best of the decade. But because there's so much and it takes so much time to kind of get through, that's the only reason why I have it a little bit lower on my top 10. At number 8, I have Touched by the Stuff from Motorists, the Toronto pop rock band. This is their sophomore release. Their first record, I thought, had its moments. It wasn't really kind of like my favorite. This album, fantastic. There's absolutely no filler. I feel like they just kind of honed their sound. The melodies are just that much more catchy. Sounds a lot like kind of power pop from like 1994 to 1997, somewhere around in there, somewhere around in those years. I don't think there's any mistake that they sound a good bit like Sloan. I would say if you're a fan of Sloan that you would really like this album. Check it out. Touched by the Stuff by Motorists at number 8. At number 7, I have How Will I Live Without the Body by Loma. It was on Sub Pop Records. There are elements of slowcore in here, elements of post-rock, where they mix in almost kind of jazzy elements into their brand of post-rock. I would say, really, if you're a fan of those last two Talk records, especially Spirit of Eden, then I think that this is an album and a band that you should check out. Emily Cross, the lead vocalist, though, is really where it's at with this band. Absolutely pitch perfect. And just the tone of her voice, she evokes so much emotion without really having to like belt it out. And the song How It Starts, definitely up there for one of my favorite songs of the year. Yeah, but just an absolutely outstanding, beautiful record. One that I feel is just not really getting its just due. Who am I? I'm not a music critic. I'm just a fan.
As you go lightly. You knew me well, should have known you better. This is how it starts to move again.
At number 6, we have another bluegrass record. AJ Lee and Blue Summit, City of Glass, the California bluegrass band. Another Molly Tuttle connection here. Her brother, Sullivan Tuttle, plays in this band. AJ Lee was also a member of the kind of like the Tuttles like family band. AJ Lee steps up as pretty much the front person, the major lead vocalist on the record, although they share vocal duties throughout. One of the songs that really kind of first caught my attention from this record is their cover of He Called Me Baby, which was written by Harlan Howard. But Patsy Cline did a version of that song that I think kind of made it famous. But what I love about this song and this version is that they're not covering the Harlan Howard kind of version or the Patsy Cline version. They're actually covering the R&B version by Candy Staton, which was on, I believe, her second full-length record on Fame. Just knock you out solos on guitar on this album. But also the fiddler, John Purratt, I believe is how you say it, Jan Purratt. Just such a unique flair. I mean, yeah, it sounds like he could almost play on like a jazz record. Definitely one of the best bluegrass releases this year by AJ Lee and Blue Summit, City of Glass.
Only grains build the city I stand, and rocks will tumble, making more sand. This won't be the last city of glass.
Number 5, I have Only God Was Above Us by Vampire Weekend. I think if you had told me at the beginning of 2024 that I would have a Vampire Weekend album in my top 5, I would have said that you were crazy, because they'd kind of been losing me a little bit as a band. This album absolutely roped me back in. Huge arrangements, right? And there's a lot of stuff going on this record, and a lot of playful mixing and a lot of playful studio work, working with big orchestras, a wide variety of instrumentation. But the songwriting is super focused and really, really tight. And there's only 10 songs on here, which helps. And I would say that the album as a whole is strongly influenced by just New York City. The art of New York City, the sound of New York City, but a heavy, heavy jazz influence, and even moments of hip hop. And this is why I'll say that. And yes, I'm about to say this. On a Vampire Weekend album, there are moments that really remind me of Tribe Called Quest, and even a little bit of the Beastie Boys, especially like Ill Communication, Beastie Boys. I'm begging with people, even those of you that eye roll, at the idea of the band of Vampire Weekend, and everything that you might think of them from the past, their trendiness and their, I don't know, J. Crew garb or whatever, to how silly their band name is. Give this album a listen. Do not ignore this record. It is absolutely fantastic, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, at number 4, I have Manning Fireworks by MJ Linderman. This is one that probably surprises nobody, so I'm going to breeze right through. This is an outstanding alt-country record. Of course, I would love it because of the alt-country vibes. MJ Linderman's songwriting is unbelievable. Such an incredible sense of emotion and humor. I was a little late to his album Boat Songs, but that has become a big one for me, a favorite of mine. And if I went back to 2022, I would say maybe my favorite album of that year. But this album is fantastic as well. It just kind of builds on what he was doing with a lot of his previous albums. A notch up on the production a little bit, a little less kind of slacker, less pavement, more Crazy Horse on this record, I would say. MJ Linderman deserves all the hype in the world. At number 3, I have Wall of Eyes by The Smile. Came out at the very beginning of the year and has not waned in favorability at all on me. If anything, I have just grown to love it more and more. It also separates Tom York and Johnny Greenwood even further away from Radiohead, in my opinion. But Tom Skinner, as a third member of this band, really brings a lot to the table. The way the jazz kind of style of drumming that he plays with, it just adds so much to their sound. The guitar parts that they write, and I don't know if that's just Johnny or Johnny and Tom, are so intricate. I would call them kind of like progressive in nature, but not really like prog rock. There's definitely some kraut influence, some krautrock influence, but I think it's absolutely amazing to be this far in. I mean, well over 30 years into their career as music partners, York and Greenwood, and they're still continuing to put out adventurous, exciting music that gets me excited. And I just couldn't be any more grateful for it.
Nowadays, everyone's full of sharing. Don't let them take me. Try to convert
at number 2, I have Endlessness by Nala Sinafro. Jazz, I guess, is like the best way that you can describe this music. To me, it's so much more than that, though. I tend to lean towards Unclassifiable. She's a harpist, incredible composer, and the majority of this album, kind of the songs run into each other, so there's a continuous flow. Every track is called Continuum, with the number after it. So Continuum 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like spiritual jazz mixed with Brian Eno and cluster. It has soul to it too. You know, the rhythm section really kind of like brings home kind of the soulful jazz sound more than anything on this record. One that's going to stick with me for a very, very long time. For sure. So that brings us to number 1, The Past is Still Alive by Hooray for the Riff Raff. Alinda Segarra, this is her, I don't even know how many albums in we are, but a continuation of incredibly strong records ever since 2014's Small Town Heroes. The next one after that, Navigator from 2017, was one of my favorites, if not my favorite of that year. Life on Earth, which came out in 2022, another top 10 record for me in that year. And then this one is my favorite, probably her best record to date. Just my opinion. This was also produced by Brad Cook, who produced Tiger's Blood by Waxahachie. Also includes his brother Phil. Jan Westerlund, I believe what he goes by now, who was a member of Megafaun with the Cook brothers. And it also includes guitarist Meg Duffy, who is an outstanding guitarist that people should know as records under the moniker Hand Habits. It's one of those albums, one of those written at a time in their life kind of albums. Alinda Segarra's father had died. Now, some of the material she had already started working on, but a lot of it really just kind of came out and just flowed out of her after that. She pulls from a lot of stories from her younger days. She was just living on the road, you know, homeless. But it's the stories of those years in her life that make this album kind of sound like it's like a journey across America. Much like, I would say, Darkness on the Edge of Town sounds. It very much shares a kinship with that record. As a lyricist, she's like an even more kind of detailed Springsteen. But then, you know, bring all of that with the songwriting, the feel of the album, all of that, bring all of that in with just the fact that I love her vocals. And my favorite album of the year, hands down, has been The Past is Still Alive by Hooray for the Riff Raff.
Little girl with a buck knife and a fake ID. Sleeping bag and a backpack in the big city. And tell me why, what don't it look like? I'm always crying. You try to hide when you hide. Baby, I know you're lying. Well, it's a hard morning. It's just begun to rise. Here's a silver spoon so you could gouge out both your eyes. I couldn't believe them when they say, watch out. I'm becoming the kind of girl that they warn me about.
Happy New Year! Sorry you have to listen to my dad talk about all these silly records that suck. My dad sucks!
Digital gramophone makes no sense.